Hello everyone. In today's lecture we are going to talk about prototype process model. The prototype process model is one of the most popularly used software development lifecycle model. In this model, a prototype of the end product is first developed and then it tested and it refined as per customers' feedback repeatedly till a final acceptable prototype is achieved. And this final prototype is the basis for developing the final product. So this process actually starts by interviewing the customers and then developing the incomplete high level paper model. So it's not necessarily be paper model, you can also use digital model. There are lots of websites out there to produce those digital models. You can visit the website principle and forum to check how to build digital models. So once your digital model is ready, you can use this model to build the initial prototype supporting only the basic functionality as desired by the customer. And then you will give it to the customer, and once the customer figures out the problems, the prototype is further refined to eliminate them. The process continues till the user approves the prototype and finds the working model to be satisfactory. So we can say this is actually a iterative trial and error method which takes place between developer and the client or customer. And also we are doing validation and verification here. It's useful for validation and verification. Validation is you are checking are we building the right system, and verification is are we building the system right. So here it's a typical representation of prototype model. So there are 6 phases in this software development lifecycle model. So the first phase is requirement gathering and analysis. So a prototyping model actually starts with requirement analysis. In this phase, the requirements of the system are defined in detail, and during the process, the user of the system are interviewed to know what is their expectation from the system. And the next step is quick design. So the second phase is primarily design or a quick design. So in this stage, a simple design of the system is created. You have interviewed the customer, you already know their requirements. Now you will make a quick design, a simple design of the system. And it's not actually the completed design, it's just a quick design. It gives a brief idea of the system to the user. So the quick design actually helps in developing the prototype. And the third phase is building a prototype. So in this phase, an actual prototype is designed based on the information gathered from the quick design. So this is actually a small working model of the required system. So the next stage is customer evaluation. So here the proposed system is presented to the customer for an initial evaluation. So it will help you to find out the strength and weakness of the working model, and you can gather the comments and suggestions and you can provide it to the developer. And the next stage is refining prototype. So if your customer is not happy with your current prototype, you need to refine the prototype according to the customer's feedback and suggestion. And you will continue this phase until all the requirements specified by the customer are met. Once the user is satisfied with the developed prototype, a final system is developed based on the approved final prototype. And the next stage is engineer product. So here we are actually implementing the product. Once the final system is developed based on the final prototype, it is truly tested and deployed to the production. So now we will show the prototyping as a tool for requirement engineering. One of the reasons to use prototyping in requirement engineering is that sometimes it's very difficult for some users to express their requirements precisely. So then it's natural to clarify this through prototyping. So you can achieve this prototyping by developing the user interface quickly, and also you will develop some interaction component, but those interaction components are not the actual thing. It's a much lesser extent. It's not the actual software that actually processes the input. So in this way, the user may get a good impression of what the future system will provide him. So here in this figure, the left hand side of the figure is concerned with the prototyping stages, and the right hand side concerns the actual production of the system. Then the difference between the two branches is that by using different techniques and tools, the left hand side can be traversed much more quickly and against much lower cost. And in the right hand side, we will use different techniques during the actual production phase, and the emphasis will also be different here, like we will emphasize on documentation and so on. So the product development starts with the initial requirement gathering phase, and then a quick design is carried out and a prototype is built. The developed prototype is submitted to the customer for evaluation, and based on the customer feedback, the requirements are redefined and the prototype is suitably modified. And this cycle of obtaining customer feedback and modifying the prototype continues till the customer approves the prototype. So this is the left side is showing in this figure. And once the customer approves the prototype, the actual software is developed. Here the software is developed using classical waterfall model, and also we can use the iterative waterfall approach. So this figure is showing the iterative waterfall model with prototyping. So here we have a prototyping model, and it's attached with requirement engineering design, and then once your final design is done, you can start your iterative waterfall model to build the actual system. And here are the types of prototyping. So in some books you will see there are 4 types of prototyping: rapid throughway prototyping, evolutionary prototyping, incremental prototyping, extreme prototyping. But in this slide we will talk about only 2 prototyping models. These 2 are actually most important one. This is throughway prototyping and evolutionary prototyping. So throughway prototyping is sometimes called rapid prototyping. So from the word rapid you can understand it's this prototyping will be really quick. So here the idea behind this is you will just quickly design a prototype, you will show it to the customer. If the customer don't like it, then you will throw the prototype and then you will build a new one from scratch and you will do it quickly. So these type of prototypes actually uses very little efforts with minimum requirement analysis to build a prototype. And once the actual requirements are understood, the prototype is discarded and the actual system is developed with a much clearer understanding of user requirements. So these techniques is actually useful for exploring ideas and getting instant feedback for customers' requirements. And the next one is evolutionary prototyping. So in this prototyping, the initial prototype is incrementally redefined on the basis of the customer feedback till it finally gets accepted. So in this model, we are not actually developing a prototype from scratch for every iteration of the process. We are doing it incrementally. So if we compare it with rapid throughway prototype, it's a better approach because it saves time as well as effort. And this model is helpful for project which uses a new technology that is not well understood, and it also useful for complex projects where every functionality must be checked once. Now, if we talk about the advantages of the prototyping, the advantage actually, the first one is here users are actively involved in development. So if there is any errors, it will be detected in the initial stage of the software development process. And also if you miss any functionality, it can be also identified early in the stages, and it will reduce the risk of failure, right? And this prototyping actually helps to gain a better understanding of the customer's need, and customer can actually feel the product at a very early stage, so the customer satisfaction exists. And the most important advantage is that there is hardly any chance of software rejection. So these are the advantages of prototyping. And if we talk about disadvantages, the first one is, what if your customer is not interested to participate in the iteration cycle for the longer time duration? Then you cannot do prototyping, right? And also, adding new features to the special purpose prototyping tools is easy. So when user will see that it's really easy to add new additional requirements, they might give you new features, new requirements to add. So this will affect the performance as well as the quality of the end product. And also, each time when the prototype is evaluated by the customer might give very different types of requirements, right? So there might be too many various requirements, and it will be very difficult for the software developers to accommodate all the changed requirements by the clients. And there is one more issue, that customer will see an early prototype model, right? So they might think that the actual product will be delivered to him soon. So these are the disadvantages of using prototyping model. So now we will discuss about some recommendations for using prototyping. So the first thing is, when should we use this prototyping model? So we will use it when the requirements are unclear. So then we will do requirement prototyping in requirement engineering phase. And also, it's very important to perform planned and controlled prototyping. At a very early stage, we need to approve a prototype and only then allow the team to move to the next step. And also, you should select the appropriate step size for each version. And one important thing is that you should implement important features early, so that if you run out of the time, you still have a worthwhile system in your hand.